Welcome back. The Washington quarter isn't just pocket change. It's a piece of American history. First minted in 1932, this coin has seen war, peace, and everything in between. But here's the twist. Some quarters are hiding rare secrets, worth big money. Let's dive in and uncover the ones that could change your collection forever. 1988 D Washington Quarter Dollar. Sounds like just another coin from the late 80s, right? Just another 25-cent piece that's passed through thousands of hands, tucked into vending machines, lost in couch cushions, or tossed into a change jar. But hold on. Because what if I told you that this very coin, this simple, everyday 1988 D quarter, could carry a hidden value so big, so unexpected, that it would make your jaw drop? What if your good condition 1988 Denver minted quarter wasn't just spare change, but a hidden treasure? Let's take a closer look. This coin was minted in Denver, as shown by the small D just to the right of George Washington's ponytail. The obverse design features the famous portrait of Washington. The video, very same design by John Flanagan that graced quarters for more than 65 years. The words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" are still boldly struck, and the date 1988 is nice and clear. No fading, no smoothing. It's in good shape. On the reverse, you've got the American bald eagle perched with wings spread, clutching arrows surrounded by the words "United States of America," "A pluribus unum," and "Quarter Dollar." It's classic. It's iconic. But is it rare? Now here's where things take an exciting turn. While millions of these 1988 D quarters were struck, over 586 million to be exact, not all of them were struck perfectly. And that's the golden ticket. Mint errors. These mistakes, made during production, are what transform an ordinary quarter into a coin worth hundreds, thousands, or, in some shocking cases, up to $25,000 or more. One of the most sought-after 1988 D errors is the off-center strike. If the coin wasn't properly aligned in the press when it was struck, it can appear with part of the design missing, sometimes 10%, 20%, or even more off-center. A 1988 D quarter with a 15 to 20% off-center strike in good condition can sell for $150 to $500, and if the date and mint mark are still visible, that jumps to over $1,000 easily. But the real shock comes from clad layer errors. This is when the nickel outer layer of the coin fails to bond correctly with the copper core. You end up with a coin that appears mostly copper on one side, or even both. Some look like pennies at first glance. These errors are rare, and they're hot among collectors. One 1988 D quarter, missing its entire outer clad layer, sold for over $3,500. There's also the elusive double die error. Imagine seeing the word "Liberty" or "In God We Trust" slightly shadowed or doubled, like a blurry echo stamped into the metal. That doubling isn't a flaw. It's a minting accident, a very rare one. And if you've got a 1988 D quarter with strong doubling on the obverse or reverse, especially in good condition, you're potentially holding $5,000 to $10,000 in your hand. And for the highest echelon, the absolute top of the grading scale, a pristine, mint state 1988 D quarter, untouched, uncirculated, with mirror-like surfaces and razor-sharp detail. If it's graded MS-68 or higher by PCGS or NGC, it can command $2,000 to $3,500 or more. In fact, a few specimens have sold at auction for values pushing beyond $4,000, purely based on condition and rarity at that grade. Here's the wildest part. Many of these valuable coins are still out there. They're sitting unnoticed in change jars, dresser drawers, and forgotten piggy banks across America. That's right. The treasure hasn't been fully discovered yet. And with each passing year, as more coins wear down, the good condition ones, like this, become rarer. And that pushes the value even higher. So take a long, hard look at that 1988 D quarter. Does it have an odd strike? A strange coloration? A smooth surface where it shouldn't? Could you be staring at a hidden error worth thousands? This is what makes coin collecting so thrilling. It's not just about old coins or shiny ones. It's about the hunt, the mystery, the possibility that the next coin you examine could be worth more than your monthly rent. And this 1988 D quarter? It might be just the beginning. Because the next coin coming up in this incredible lineup could take the wow factor to a whole new level. You won't believe what we've got coming. Next, stick around. You're not going to want to miss it. 1995 P. Washington Quarter Dollar. At first glance, it looks just like any other quarter we've handled over the years. The front has that familiar face, George Washington, looking confidently to the left, Liberty etched above him, In God We Trust stamped proudly to the left, and the year 1995 sitting neatly beneath his chin. And just beside his ponytail, that little P mint mark tells us this coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. It's circulated. Yes, there are signs of wear, a bit of smoothing on the high points, maybe even a small scratch or two. But make no mistake, this everyday coin might be a lot more special than it seems. Let's dig deeper. In 1995, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 1 billion Washington quarters. 1.1 billion, to be exact. That's a huge number, and it makes the regular worn-down quarters from that year pretty common. But here's where it gets interesting. Among all those billions, a tiny handful of quarters were struck with errors. Mistakes made in the minting process. Little slip-ups that created coins with strange doubling, missing details, or even completely wrong metal compositions. These mistakes, once viewed as imperfections, are now the most valuable coins in the eyes of collectors. So what kind of errors make a 1995 P quarter worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars? Let's start with double die errors. One of the most jaw-dropping discoveries in recent years was a 1995 P quarter with strong doubling in the words Liberty and In God We Trust. These letters looked like they were echoing, bold, clear doubling you can see without a débat magnifying glass. If you're lucky enough to find one of these in circulated condition, it could easily be worth $150 to $300. But in better condition, you're looking at $1,000 plus. Some collectors have paid as much as $2,000 for high-grade examples with eye-popping doubling. Next up is one of the rarest errors, a wrong plancher strike. This happens when a coin is struck on the wrong kind of metal blank. Imagine a quarter that was accidentally stamped on a blank meant for a dime or even a foreign coin. That kind of mistake makes jaws drop at coin shows. One confirmed 1995 P quarter struck on a 10-cent plancher sold for over $4,500 at auction. It looked smaller, lighter, and even had the edges trimmed. Crazy, right? And then there's the missing clad layer error. Quarters are supposed to be made from a nickel-coated copper sandwich. But sometimes the nickel layer doesn't stick. The result? A 1995 P quarter that looks copper red on one or both sides, like a penny in disguise. These errors are striking, literally. If you find a missing clad layer example, especially with full detail and no major scratches, that coin could be worth $500 to $200, depending on condition and how dramatic the error is. Of course, condition always plays a role. Most 1995 P quarters are going to be worth their face value if they're scratched or heavily worn. But a sharp, clean example, graded MS-67 or MS-68, can fetch some serious money. In fact, a 1995 P quarter in pristine, mint state condition once sold at auction for $1,880. That's right, over $1,800 for a coin most people wouldn't look at twice. And here's the real shocker. Many of these coins, these strange, flawed, misstruck treasures, are still out there, hiding in jars, pockets, drawers, and old coffee cans. Every single day, people walk right past them without ever knowing what they're holding. That's what makes this so thrilling. That's why collectors are always looking, always hoping to find the next big score. So, go ahead. Take a second look at that 1995 P. Washington quarter in your hand. The one you almost spent at the gas station or gave as change for $1. Does something look off? A little thicker? A little lighter? Is there doubling? A color that doesn't belong? Because if it's got even the smallest error, or if it's in near-perfect condition, you just might be holding a coin worth 100 times, 1,000 times, even 10,000 times its face value. And that's what makes this series so electrifying. And trust me, if you think that's exciting, just wait until you see the next coin. What we've got coming will absolutely blow your mind. Let's keep going. You're not going to believe what's up next. 1776 to 1976, bicentennial $quarter. Right away, those dates jump out at you. Bold, historic, powerful. This isn't just any old quarter. This is a piece of American celebration. A coin minted in honor of 200 years of independence. A national symbol of pride struck by the millions. Yet still holding mysteries and values few could ever imagine. The one in front of us today might be in bad shape, sure. It's got rust, maybe some corrosion, clearly been through a lot. But don't be fooled. Even coins like this, worn and weathered, can hold surprises worth far more than 25 cents. Let's talk about the basics first. This quarter was issued in 1975 and 1976, but here's the twist. All bicentennial quarters are dated 1776-1976, regardless of which year they were struck. The U.S. Mint made over 1.6 billion of them. That's right. More than 1.5 billion of these special quarters were released into circulation. But not all were created equal. The design is what makes this quarter instantly recognizable and deeply nostalgic. On the front, the standard George Washington profile remains, but the back? That's where things get exciting. Instead of the traditional eagle, the reverse features a colonial drummer. Drumsticks mid-air, revolutionary hat on his head. Designed by Jack L.R. To the side, a victory torch encircled by 13 stars representing the original colonies. This quarter wasn't just currency. It was a message of legacy, of history, of freedom. Americans were proud of this coin. Still are. But even a coin struck in celebration can hide extraordinary value. And that's where this gets thrilling. Most circulated bicentennial quarters are worth just face value. Maybe 50 cents to $1 for a nicer example. But start looking at the errors, and the numbers shoot through the roof. One of the rarest finds is the double-die obverse, where parts of the front design, especially Liberty or In God, We Trust, appear doubled. These are subtle at first glance, but to a trained eye or a lucky collector, this kind of doubling can mean hundreds or even thousands of dollars, especially if the doubling is strong and the coin is in decent condition. Then there are the wild misstrikes, off-center strikes, where the coin is visibly shifted, missing parts of the design entirely. Or the ultra-rare clad layer errors, where the outer nickel layer didn't bond, leaving the coin a bright copper red on one side. Those coins, $500 to $2,000 easily, depending on the severity and clarity of the error. But let's crank the shock. Level up even more. There were special silver versions of this coin, yes, actual 40% silver quarters minted in both proof and uncirculated finishes. These were never released for general circulation. They were sold in collector sets only. If one of those silver bicentennial quarters made its way into someone's pocket by mistake or got spent unknowingly, they could now be worth $20 to $75, even in circulated condition. And in high-grade proof condition, try $150 to $500 or more depending on the rarity of the set. Now, here's where it gets insane. A perfect condition bicentennial quarter, certified MS-68 or above, especially with errors or from the silver set, has sold at auction for over $18,000. Yes, one single quarter, same design, same size, just in top condition, fetched more than the price of a brand new car. Think about that. A coin you might overlook in a drawer, give to a child, or spend at the store for bubble gum could secretly be worth 5 figures, just because of a slight minting error, or because it's made of silver, or because it's held up in incredible condition through almost 50 years of circulation. Even the rusty one in your hand, the one that's seen better days, has a story. Who carried it? Where did it go? What hands passed it along in 1976 during the great bicentennial celebrations? This coin is history, aged and worn, but still part of something bigger. So the next time you see a 1776-1976 bicentennial quarter, don't toss it aside. Flip it over. Look closely. Run a magnet across it. Weigh it. If it's a silver one or has an odd error, it could be worth far more than you'd ever expect. And if it turns out to be one of those legendary misstrikes or silver proofs lost to circulation, you just might be holding the next jackpot coin. And guess what? What's coming next might blow this out of the water. The surprises just keep coming. Let's move on. You won't believe what we're uncovering next. 1974, Washington quarter dollar without a mint mark. At first glance, it might seem like just another old coin from your change jar, but hold up. This isn't just any quarter. It's from a time when America was changing fast, politically, socially, even economically. And when it comes to coins, 1974 was the calm before a storm in U.S. currency history. What we're about to dive into might sound like a simple story about a 25-cent piece. But buckle in, because the value behind this coin, especially under the right circumstances, has shocked collectors and stunned auction houses. Now, let's talk about the coin itself. If your 1974 Washington quarter doesn't have a mint mark, it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Back in those days, Philadelphia didn't use a mint mark on its coins, which makes them look clean and simple. But don't let that fool you. The devil's in the details. This coin features the classic Washington profile on the obverse, designed by John Flanagan. A stoic portrait of America's first president facing left, liberty above his head, and the date 1974 below. On the reverse, the familiar eagle stands proud, wings spread wide, perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath. It's the standard design we all remember from our pockets growing up. But what makes this quarter special? Let's see. Start with the mintage. Over 801 million of these quarters were minted in Philadelphia alone. That's a massive number. So in worn, circulated condition, most of these quarters are still worth, yes, just 25 cents, maybe 50 cents to $1, to a beginning collector. But when the condition improves, or the coin reveals something unusual. That's where things get wildly interesting. Here's what gets collectors excited. The 1974 Doubled Die Obverse, DDO. That's right. Some 1974 quarters from Philadelphia came out with a strong doubling on the obverse. If you look closely at "In God We Trust" or "Liberty," you might see clear, bold, shadow-like letters, a telltale sign of a doubled die. These aren't just minor imperfections. These are rare, minting anomalies, and they can send values skyrocketing. A strong DDO in a high grade could easily fetch $250 to $1,000, sometimes more. Next up, condition. This is where the serious money comes into play. A 1974 Washington quarter with no mint mark, in perfect mint state 67 or higher, can go from pocket change to hundreds, even over $1 in $200 at auction. Why? Because out of the millions minted, only a tiny fraction survive in pristine condition without any contact marks, scratches, or wear. They must be sharp, lustrous, and virtually flawless. That rarity drives serious bidding wars at numismatic auctions. But there's one more twist in the 1974 story, and it's jaw-dropping. In late 1974, the U.S. Mint began preparing for a massive change. They were experimenting with aluminum cents. Yes, actual pennies made of aluminum instead of copper. But here's the kicker. A few quarters, accidentally, were struck on the wrong planchets during this experimental phase. Some rare 1974 quarters were minted on foreign coin blanks, or struck, using experimental planchets that were never meant to be released. These errors are ultra-rare, and in some cases have fetched up to $10,000 or more, especially if the coin's origin and metallurgical content can be confirmed through analysis. Imagine this. You're holding a 1974 quarter. It looks ordinary. You flip it, maybe give it a rub with your thumb. But wait, what if it feels too light? Or too heavy? What if the color's slightly off? Or the edges seem strange? That's the moment you dig deeper. Because you might just be holding something incredibly rare. A mistake the mint never meant to let slip. A coin that could be the highlight of your collection or your retirement fund. And let's not forget the emotional power of these coins. For many collectors aged 50 to 75, this is more than metal. It's memory. 1974 was a time of Watergate, gas shortages, and new beginnings. Having a quarter from that year, especially one with unusual traits or exceptional condition, is like holding a piece of your own story, a tangible link to the past. So, don't underestimate this unassuming little coin. A 1974 Washington quarter without a mint mark might just look like spare change, but under the right light, with the right error, or in the right grade, it could be a shockingly valuable treasure waiting to be discovered. And what we've got coming next? It just might blow this one out of the water. Stay close, because the surprises are far from over. 1970 Washington quarter dollar without a mint mark. Now this coin, at first glance, might seem ordinary, just a quarter that's been hanging around for over 5 decades. But don't be fooled. This little piece of pocket change has a few secrets up its sleeve, and depending on what you're holding, it could be worth a whole lot more than just 25 cents. In fact, for some collectors, it's worth thousands. Yes, you heard that right. Thousands of dollars. Let's begin with the basics. Since this quarter has no mint mark, it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which was standard practice for the time. Back then, Philadelphia didn't mark their coins with a letter, so they often go unnoticed. But some of the most valuable and unusual finds have come right out of Philly. This 1970 coin features the classic Washington bust designed by John E. Flanagan with "Liberty" arched above, "In God We Trust" to the left, and the date 1970 beneath George Washington's neckline. On the reverse, we see the regal bald eagle, wings outstretched, perched on a bundle of arrows, flanked by olive branches. It's the same design we all remember growing up. But beneath this familiar surface is a coin shrouded in mystery, surprise, and sometimes even controversy. You see, 1970 was no ordinary year for coins. There was something going on behind the scenes, something that would later spark one of the most shocking numismatic revelations of the 20th century. Most 1970 quarters are made of a standard copper-nickel-clad composition, but every once in a while, collectors come across something different, something unbelievable. Let's talk about one of the most talked-about errors in coin collecting. The 1970 S-proof quarter struck on a 1941 Canadian quarter planchet. Yes, you read that right. Somehow, at the San Francisco Mint, a Canadian coin blank, intended for a completely different denomination and country, ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. The result? A U.S. quarter with some very strange traits, including underweight measurements and remainders of a Canadian design peeking through. That bizarre, unexpected coin sold for an eye-popping $35,000 at auction. And it all started with someone just paying close attention to what seemed like a plain old quarter. But back to your coin, the 1970 quarter without a mint mark in good condition. While it's not one of the rare proof errors, it's still a coin worth examining closely. A well-preserved 1970 quarter from Philadelphia can fetch anywhere from $5 to $25 in circulated good condition to over $150 or even $300 in mint state 65 or better. And that's just for regular coins, without any errors. Once we start talking about doubling, off-center strikes, or coins with unusual toning or metal composition, the values can jump dramatically. For example, there are known doubled die obverse varieties on some 1970 quarters. If the words Liberty or In God We Trust appear doubled, especially with strong, clear separation, you could be holding something rare. In mint state, such a doubled die quarter could be worth $400 to $1,500, depending on the clarity of the doubling and overall condition of the coin. Another huge factor is grading. A coin in mint state 67 or higher, without scratches, nicks, or dull spots, is extremely hard to come by from this era. Most quarters were used daily for decades, tossed in pockets and coin jars, or spent at diners and gas stations. Finding one that's been preserved, untouched, maybe even from an original mint set? That's like striking gold. Collectors have paid well over $1,000 for high-grade examples with stunning luster and razor-sharp details. And then there are those coins with dramatic errors, like struck through grease, which causes parts of the design to be missing or faded, or off-center strikes, where the whole image is shifted. These quirky, one-of-a-kind mistakes often fetch serious money, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on how dramatic the error is. It's incredible when you think about it. A coin you've likely held hundreds of times, a design so familiar it's practically invisible, suddenly worth more than your car. That's the magic of coin collecting. That's why so many people, especially from older generations, are rediscovering these treasures in their drawers, shoeboxes, and old jars. This 1970 quarter might not have a mint mark, but it absolutely has potential. In good condition, it's a solid collector's piece. But if you've got an error, a rare die variety, or a high-grade version, you might be looking at a coin that could steal the show at an auction and leave jaws dropping in disbelief. So next time you see that gray, familiar shine of a 1970 quarter, take a second look. Because what seems common might just be uncommonly valuable. And what's coming up next in our journey? If you thought this was exciting, just wait. The next coin might raise the bar even higher. Stay with us.